All right, so we're gonna keep the stirring going, and now we're gonna do a little bit of integrating of what are the action steps, what are we moving forward. But to do that first, if everybody could pull out a card from the fishbowl in the middle of your table. Raise your hand if you don't have one.
Card that was written on.
Oh yeah. The cards that are written on, not a blank one.
Bob, go to a table that has cards.
All right, looks like there's one, Bob, in this table, right? Oh, there we go. Okay, and if there's an extra one in your fishbowl, take it. Oh wait, here's one. Cameron, you can have. Oh, you have it. Okay. You're taking ones that are already written on, so you should have in your hand one that's already written on. Can somebody take? Do you have one? Thank you. Will you take two? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to shuffle this deck. So if you feel like walking around, will you model with me? We're just going to come up to each other and trade, and then I'm going to come up to you and trade, and then I'm going to come up to a new person and trade. So we're just going to move around. If you don't feel like moving around, just sit lovely in your chair, open to the middle of the room, and someone will come up to you and trade. We're just going to take like 30 seconds, shuffle your cards. Walk around and trade cards with another person. Okay, stop and find somebody and pair up. And you're going to pair up and just read the cards that you're holding and talk about what action steps are on the cards that you're holding. Raise your hand if you don't have somebody to pair up with. Great. In the back, Cameron, thank you. All right, so now read your cards to each other and just talk about what's on your cards. Okay, it looks like folks are finishing. You got like 30 seconds to finish up what you're talking about. Ingrid? All right, go ahead and stop. And let's do another round of shuffling. Shuffle again. Give your card, just hand card. Just trade it off. And then trade with another person. And then trade with another person. Find those people that are sitting at tables and trade with them. Don't leave anybody out.
Well, make your way across the room and trade it.
All right, keep trading. All right, and go ahead and stop and find a new partner or the same partner, but you have different cards in your hand.
You all were supposed to trade, but y'all kept talking, so trade. No, with other people.
Okay, it's okay. You can just join. How about join them?
Oh, Joe, Beatrice, Joe, over here. Beatrice.
So you're sharing the things that are on your cards now and just talking about what's there.
All right, we're going to ask you to do one last people shuffle. If we can get your attention and ask you to do one last people shuffle. So walk around the room and switch cards with someone else.
Follow Emily's lead. If they're still talking, just stick a card in their hand and take the card out of their hand.
With anyone else, right? Make your way across the room.
People in the middle, people on the
Right.
edges are looking for each other.
You two were looking for each other right here. Huh? Yes.
Okay, go ahead and wrap up your conversation and make your way back to a chair. Go ahead and you can find a place to sit now. You can take your card and put it in any of the fish bowls. In the fish bowl. Put your card in any fish bowl. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead and put the cards in the fish bowl so we can catch them all. We're going fishing. All right, just curious, just a show of hands, how many people had a card that had an idea that you hadn't thought of? Any like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, there's one and two interesting out there. How many had a card or saw a card that you were like, oh, that helps to inform what I'm thinking is my next steps? Okay, a few of those. 4, yeah, okay. Anything that like you're like, yeah, that's not my next step. All right, well, thanks. Pass it to you.
All right. So we are going to have another round of table discussions that we hope will lead all of us into some concrete actions, right? So here are your questions. What action are you ready to take now? What partnerships can support your next step? What are the resources or information you might need? And how might you track what you're learning and experiencing along the way? So we're going to give you, what do we have, 15 minutes?
15, yeah.
15 minutes for this discussion there at your table before we begin to harvest the brilliance that's coming from you. It would be ideal if we had 4 people at a table at least. So if you are sitting at a table and you've got extra to spare, yes.
All right, go ahead and wrap up your conversation. You can do that. Oh, okay. All right, go ahead and wrap it up. Think this is the last time I'm going to be rude and interrupt you. Well. Okay, so we have some real important question to ask you right now. All right, the very important question we have to ask based on the conversations you were just having is, does anybody in this room have a request? And I know that can be a really hard thing to acknowledge, that there's something, because you might have a request that nobody can support with. So just gonna name that. But if there is, let's say you need a particular person with access to I need access to somebody that has this particular knowledge to make the case that I need to make going back to my community, or I need to have a conversation with this particular type of person or specific person. Somebody in the room might know that specific person. If you need an accountability partner, because it's something you really want to do, but you could use somebody else to check in on. Any type of request. Anybody have a request you want to?
I would like to openly ask that if anybody is willing to connect with students at Florida State, we would love to have you. I'm happy to be the conduit and liaison for that, but just want to openly put it out there that if any of you happen to be in Tallahassee, we would love to host you.
What's your name?
Liz.
Liz. Y'all, please come see Liz. If you or somebody you know might be interested, and help make that connection for FSU.
Okay, you know who I am, Ingrid from Gulfport. And my next action is to create a leadership mastermind group that would ultimately lead into a leadership program that would actually help prepare people for leadership, whether it's civic leadership, community leadership, PTA leadership, any kind of leadership. I'm looking for partners. I'm looking for funders. I'm looking for people that want to support this sort of thing that we can replicate. This would be a prototype type of thing, again, that could potentially be scaled. It doesn't have to be Gulfport-centric. It's just that that's where we are. That's where we have some energy. But if you've got any ideas, any connections, I just got some great resources right here at the table. Just give me your card, and I will follow up with you.
Great, thank you. Any other requests?
Not to sound too similar to a previous speaker, but if anyone's interested in working with the University of Florida or UF students, also UF students I know would be very interested. We're with the Bob Graham Center for Public Service. I know we've said that a few times. But additionally, I've already talked to Liz a bunch, but if anyone here is from college or university, private, public, whatever, we're always looking for cross-institutional collaborations on various things. because our strength is in numbers, right? So if anyone here is with any academic institutions, and that could also be public schools. We've been trying to do a lot of K-12 stuff too, mostly in our own county, but we're definitely interested in working with partners and stakeholders throughout the state on bringing civics into education. So if anyone's interested in that, reach out to us at the Graham Center. Our emails are on the website.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, kind of just to go off what Andrew said, one of the things that we do at the Bob Graham Center at the University of Florida is called the Future of Florida Summit. And the point of it is it's the largest public policy summit, student-led, in Florida. So if any of you guys have any connections, we're looking for students from all over Florida to come and attend this 3-day summit that's in March. So I've been collecting business cards since yesterday, but if I missed you, I'd love to talk to you.
And I want to just like lift up, I know the folks in here that aren't students and the folks in here that are students, everybody's got really busy lives. And I just really want to lift up that the students are asking for support. And so as much as we can show up to say yes to these requests that are coming in, to stretch your time and capacity.
That's actually ironic because I'm a student asking for support. So, it's senior year. So I'm not applying for colleges because I want to stay in the community college that I'm currently dual enrolled in to finish my associate's degree. But after next year, I should be getting my associate's degree, and I want to look into venturing either like FSU or FGCU because that's like local, and then also like UM like for law school and stuff like that. But I don't want to do law in the sense of like judicial. I would like it in legislative. But if you guys know any like scholarships that you guys have met me these last 2 days, so if you guys have any scholarships in mind that like kind of represent who I am, so I can apply, let me know because your girl is freaking out. But yeah, stuff like that.
Any other requests?
And while she's walking over here, I just want to once again lift up what Ashley said earlier. Like part of civic engagement and civic health is the way that we support the young people in our communities and in our state. So I hope that we are hearing, and not just hearing, but thinking of ways we can step up and support and meet the needs of what this next generation has asked of us.
Make the connections, because there's a
Right.
lot of people that aren't still in the room. So for those of us that are, like, who can we connect these folks to, even if it's not us?
So awkward. It's okay. I mentioned to a few of you, but I am going to be have already planned about 8 World Cafes for 2024 to help guide Pinellas County's urban forestry master plan. And I would like actual table hosts that would like stay at the table. And so if you're interested in just helping or facilitating or want to be a net body or a fly on the wall, any support would be grateful. I'm just one person again. Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay.
No, just teasing. Hands back.
Step away from the table. So the one thing I'd like to see is where is this plan in action? Like, where is the deck, whether it's Seattle or Toronto or wherever? I mean, if somebody knows where a real robust civic collaborative initiative is going on, like, would they reach out to me and let me know? I'll make the phone call. But like, if it's not in Florida, well, where the hell is it? And why don't we look at what that looks like before we just maybe start from scratch? So anyway, that's it.
I just wanted to say that if anybody has spoken with either me or Fatima and is interested in what we're doing with our consultancy, we're trying to make those connections with, organizations, government entities, and small businesses, small networks, community networks that aren't speaking to each other. They just need that help making those connections and figuring out what that is. We help in different aspects from her urban planning side. I do a little bit of the website design, social media aspect of it all. And we also have a third partner who focuses on administration and helping with just to see where certain things aren't working out. That's what we do, and that's what we're here for, to network, make those connections, and just reach out to either of us or let us know who is in need of that, and we'll be sure to reach out.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other requests? And by request, well, so we're talking about partnerships, resources. Feel good because the next thing, and it's appropriate that we effectively bring an end to the day here, and that is looking very directly at what are you all going to do? What are you all going to leave here doing? Because you didn't just spend 2 days sitting around listening to interesting speeches. I mean, you did listen to interesting speeches, but the goal is to have you all take some next steps. And you all have spent a lot of time talking with each other, but we in the whole room haven't heard what the next steps are. So, what Daniel says he is going to do next might inspire what Beatrice does next, or it might spark some connections where they can come together. So, that's what we want to ask you. What are some of the things that you all have decided is your very next step?
I hope my next step is to continue to engage more youth, and I hope other people are also taking that. It doesn't have to be something difficult. It can just be talking to a youth in your family. Doesn't matter the age. Even our 3, 4, 5-year-old babies are pretty with the times. So talk with them. You'll be surprised on what they notice. So I hope that you guys all at least talk to one young person who you wouldn't think has a valid opinion or a valid way to affect civic engagement on any age.
Well, I had the pleasure of welcoming everybody at the beginning and here at the end. I'm not the last speaker, but at least as chair of the Florida Civic Advance. I think everything we heard and learned today reinforces, I think, where the board had felt we needed to go, which was to reinstitute the statewide inventory of civic health, create that baseline. And also, if coming out of this meeting or other gatherings from people that are here and move back to go with other partners, we want to reinforce the local efforts, not necessarily sequentially, but in parallel to doing the statewide effort.
Thank you. So I'm glad you said that because it'll be interesting as the rest of you answer to hear where you are. So where you're taking this next step. What are you going to do? Oh, are you ready, Joyce? Did you raise your hand? Oh, darn. I was waiting to hear.
Yeah, so I don't want to do this. Maybe somebody else does. I really think that there should be an article or a press release or something coming out of this that kind of summarizes this, that I'm in Gulfport, I have a paper, I can submit it to that. I'd love to have the media pick up on what we have been learning here, and a journalist really pull some of these concepts together, as well as the resources. Not my bailiwick. Rather have somebody else do it. So are there any journalists in the room? Cameron, no, and but maybe you, if any of you are writers, would love to have you do that. I've got another project which I've already talked about, but it just feels like this is rich. This is really rich, and I really hope that there will be some media coverage of all the good stuff.
He's talking about me.
Oh, you. Hello.
Because we're never former journalists, right?
No, well, whatever.
And to that point, will there be a follow-up information being sent out with like some of the notes, access to any slide? I think Dawn mentioned about sharing her slides. Will there be some sort of follow-up email?
So everyone should expect within about a week's time that the website landing page will have all of the PowerPoint slides that were presented yesterday and today, and then we'll have short interviews, video interviews, and working with the videographer, we'll figure out how quickly we can pull together and make both a short version of the summit, a video transcription, as well as the different 30, 40-minute speeches and some of the Will Cafe conversations. So we've captured that all. We're going to have to go through a process, but the slides will be up almost immediately, and so you can at least guarantee that. And then we're going to discuss whether we need. We've done a couple of reports from some previous summits, but then we didn't do reports for other summits where we just had the videos up, et cetera, and the agenda and the PowerPoints. So not sure I can promise a full report of the summit, but it's the point earlier to capture this in some fashion to share with media would be a really worthwhile exercise, and I think we're going to try and think how to get that done.
I actually have a request. I didn't ask for requests before. Once we get those videos up, so many of you in the room are change makers and influencers in your community. If we put it on our LinkedIn and social media, can you reshare it and say that you came to the summit and that you learned something from it? Because we can do reports all day long, which I think is great and we'll do, but really you're so respected in your fields across the state. I think that's going to make an even bigger impact. And tell them they want to learn about becoming a member of FCA or the work that we're doing, they can send them to our website, but we'll make sure you have that information. But if you could share it, that would be amazing.
It goes to Cameron's story of, just having one journalist there watching them protest in the woods can make such a huge impact. So who that one person is that shares it. And we can also, we'll type up these notes. So if you just want to say like, these are some of the priorities that have been named or priorities that need attention in Florida, those will be accessible.
So surely more of you have some next steps. Look, there's no next step that is too small. So we aren't asking you to change the world all by yourself. We are asking, what can you do next to advance, go ahead, civic engagement?
So we at our table said that we going to look at the theory of change and work with Bob to see if he's got something we can use and/or edit to develop a civic engagement white paper to be used in Miami-Dade or South Florida to gain our county mayor's support, to identify funder support, to develop a partnership, the ideal partners to join us, and then to develop a timeline to make this happen.
Great.
So at FSU, Jess Mel and I actually have been planning a pretty exciting event that's happening next week for students, and we've been planning this since August or so. We're hosting a Rock the Vote event, even though there aren't any elections going on in Leon County this November. We're hosting students next week with tabling from over 20 community and campus organizations. There's going to be music, food, and then there's going to be a movie showing at the Student Life Cinema at FSU related to civic engagement and politics. And we're hoping that this will be a fun way to get students engaged with civics, and that hopefully we can use some of the knowledge we've gained this week to do it even better next year.
Do you feel like you're armed with more language? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Good job, everyone.
On a personal note, I was afforded a grant for research under the Bob Graham Center, and my research was actually on, identifying factors that lead to frictional relationships between colleges and their surrounding communities. And the presentations I saw yesterday on the Civic Infrastructure Index gave me a great idea in terms of like furthering the quantitative side of my research. So honestly, I want to work to actually create an own index for judging the relationship between colleges and their communities. So perhaps working a little bit further on my research and then just continuing our civic engagement presentations. We're going to be doing voter registration for sororities and also in the libraries on our campus. So grabbing different students who probably wouldn't, normally be so civically engaged and encouraging them to get signed up to vote.
Great. Thank you.
One more campus-based initiative. We've been talking about doing this thing because we talk a lot about civic engagement beyond voting, which is also something that came up a lot here. And we've been thinking about ways to get people excited, because in an odd year, it's hard to get people to come out to civic engagement events or voting-themed events in a year where there's no elections in Alachua County. So we've been thinking about just hosting roundtable discussions on topics ranging from international to hyper-local. And we've been kind of debating what the format of that might look like, and I think some issues may require more moderation than others. But I really liked this format of like small groups and mixing the small groups regularly. So the World Cafe model maybe getting implemented into some of those roundtables that we're hosting on UF's campus, because I thought this was a really good way to have an intimate conversation, yet not just talk to 3 people over and over. So I appreciate being introduced to this model.
There's a lot of free resources on the World Cafe website. Under the resources tab, you can download guides and all kinds of stuff.
So some of the stuff that we were talking about as far as action taking at this table, I know that Bola had just left, but she was talking about learning more about the Sunshine Law, because this conference was the first time that she had actually heard about that, and then me as well, I was like, what? But then also going to city hall meetings and like making it regular, but not just going, but like bringing a friend with you or like bringing someone else with you. That way, like you're also engaging other people, because as civically minded individuals, we're like, yeah, this is something that we should be doing, but also we should also educate others on why they should be doing it as well. And then also, I'm a big advocate for educating the youth. So making sure that I am bringing back this information to my youth in government, presiding officers, my colleagues, but then also the delegates that we serve and also the younger students that I teach. So yeah.
Curious, is anyone here going to a school board meeting, for instance, or watching it online? That's a form of civic engagement. She's going over to Cameron.
So I hope I'm not actually going to a school board meeting, but I will be going, I'm sure, to one online. But I wanted to connect 2 things, sort of both something that I'm going to do and a question, which is we heard about a couple of different models for measuring aspects of civic health, so civic infrastructure index being one. The one and I'm sorry I don't recall your name, but looking at it at universities, at developing some more quantitative approaches. We are going to engage in a sort of a phased listening session to try and identify what are the other parts of our civic health and infrastructure around which there is data we can get. So not to exclude the other means of understanding our civic health, but within the context of data for civic health, we know that there's more data out there. I mentioned a few examples. They're the ones I know about and that I'm interested in. But to do that process holistically, I would encourage anyone who, after this conference, you recognize, oh, there is something here. I can see there is data that lives in this space that could be captured and could be used to help further our understanding of our civic health that was novel in some way, right? That the example that stuck with me from yesterday from Joe's presentation and the paper that I read about it was the number of permits for protests. Right, so that's data that exists all across the country, where people are applying for and getting permits to hold political demonstrations. That's a demonstration of civic engagement. There are lots of things like that, and I'm sure all of you, as you leave this, are going to come up with some of those ideas. Email them directly to me. That's my request.
This sort of relates to the school board comment. During COVID, nonprofits here are able to give credit to students, Bright Future Scholars. And so I had about 15 students, and I told them that they could go to any municipal meeting. So the length of the meeting was how many hours they got for the hours, and they got an extra hour if they wrote a 3-page, well, they had to write a 3-page summary of the meeting. So anybody who's looking to do Bright Future Scholars, don't have those children picking up trash, use civic engagement as a way to do that.
Beautiful.
I really appreciate you also saying the number of hours they go, because so often, at least in North Carolina, where I live, public comment isn't till the end. And sometimes the end is like 5 hours later. And so sitting through all those 5 hours. That's great.
So, sorry, two things. One, in response to Cameron, your thought about sort of inviting different measures, I will send you some work that was done about 5 years ago, 4 years ago by the Lou Fry Institute at University of Central Florida. And they were developing additional measures of civic health. And the one that I remembered and I thought, that's an interesting measure, is failure to show up for jury duty. And so they had it among 42 measures. And so that doesn't tell you, that tells you something, but not the entire story. So I will get from Doug that list of measures. And the second thing I wanted to say is that we have committed to doing this as an annual event, this summit, and we're very seriously thinking about Miami as our next. We've done the last two summits in 2019 and this summit in Pinellas County in St. Pete College and here at the Center for Health Equity. And we've done our two previous summits statewide in Orlando. We did an initial summit in 2016, which was just a regional summit for Greater Miami. So that would be returning to Miami and bringing both some ideas that might be developed between now and then, very related to civic health, and also trying to kind of take in the local scene in terms of innovative practices, et cetera. So stay tuned, and it'll probably be roughly around the same time in the fall of 24. We haven't set the date, but we'll probably get to that before the end of the year.
All right, we're going to hear one more, and then we're going to pass it to Ashley to wrap up.
So I kind of have a comment on what Beatrice was saying about like civic engagement and the Florida Bite Future Scholarship. So something like really exciting to share is that former Governor Rick Scott, during his time as governor, he actually made like it available. So for Florida Youth and Government program by the YMCA, every single thing that we do within this program is actually a community service hour Florida Bite Future Scholarship. So whether that's attending the 1 hour club meeting and learning more about legislative procedures at school, that still counts as like your 1 hour, which I find really cool because like I'm getting like all of my community service hours for the scholarship through youth and government, which is like really nice. But then I'm also like, it encourages me to like spend more and more time doing what I love with the kids because I'm also like benefiting from it. Well, it sounds bad, but you know what I mean. But like that's kind of cool how the civic engagement in that as well kind of bridges over.
And I want to uplift something that Beatrice said earlier and talked about earlier on the panel, is that the different ways in which communities of color in particular are doing civic engagement that often get missed. Because even as I ask the question, what are you going to do next? I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to a Delta Sigma Theta meeting, my local chapter, right? There are Mocha Moms organizations across Florida and the country of Black moms who are deeply invested in ways that never get counted in civic engagement. So, in church, right? Like, for decades, over a century, Black folks have been going to church as a way of being civically involved and politically active. So, just a couple of quick notes before we turn it over to the other Ashley.
Ashley 2, yes. Can we give it up for Ashley 1 and for Denier? Thank you all for an incredible 2 days. So we're going to close out the summit now. We're going to be a little bit early too, but a couple of quick announcements before we go. We want to say thank you to all of our sponsors who made this possible. We want to say thank you for the Center of Health Equity for allowing us to use their space, as well as the Foundation for a Healthy St. Pete. They're all of our sponsors there. Can we just clap for them? Some of them might be in the room. We're also excited to announce that we are in the process of fundraising right now for a 2020, probably 4 or 5 Civic Health Index initiative for the state of Florida. As you heard yesterday, we haven't done one since 2011, 12, so it's been a minute and it's well overdue. If you want more information, please reach out to anyone on the FCA board. If you are not a member yet of Florida Civic Advance, please come and talk to Bob at any point. And come join our webinars and our conversations. We plan to continue to have these educational opportunities going forward. It's been a pleasure to share the room with all of you today. Please make sure you take your trash with you when you go, and be safe driving, and have a wonderful weekend. What else are we missing? Oh, and if you would like to take a plant off the table. Oh, I forgot one more thing. I just saw our speakers. Can we also thank all of our speakers? So sorry. Those that were local and those that came out of town, thank you for sharing your expertise and being vulnerable. There is one in there? Okay, there's an evaluation form in your packet. There's packets at the front too if you don't have one, but there are some evaluations. Please fill that out if you wouldn't mind. Leave it at your table here so we can grab that from you. Any other announcements that I'm missing, board members? Oh, yes. We thanked him yesterday, but we'll thank him again. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bob, and the rest of the board. Any other announcements? We're good? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you. Be safe traveling home.